Keanu Reeves stood at the entrance of one of the most prestigious pet boutiques in Beverly Hills. The store was a palace of luxury, with sparkling crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling and shiny marble floors that gleamed under the warm lighting. The smell of expensive perfumes for pets filled the air, and the soft sound of classical music floated around the space. However, in sharp contrast to the opulence surrounding him, Keanu stood dressed in a worn leather jacket, faded jeans, and scuffed boots that clearly showed the marks of real life, not the kind of life that fit in with the wealthy customers shopping in this exclusive store. Keanu's presence was calm and quiet, almost peaceful, but it didn't go unnoticed. He wasn't like the other people there who were bustling about with their designer handbags and loud demands, talking about which high-end collar or grooming product they were going to buy for their pampered pets. Keanu seemed out of place, but there was something about the way he carried himself that caught people's attention. He wasn't trying to stand out, but somehow he did. A man named Oliver Hawk, one of the boutique's most valued clients, couldn't help but take notice. He stood nearby, his perfectly pressed Italian suit exuding a sense of wealth and importance. His gold watch gleamed in the soft light, and every move he made seemed calculated, designed to show the world his status. Oliver had built his reputation in Beverly Hills by knowing what things were worth, but when his gaze fell upon Keanu, he instantly judged him. Oliver scanned Keanu from head to toe, his eyes narrowing. He was used to determining people's worth by what they wore, and to him Keanu's casual attire screamed outsider. Oliver adjusted his watch with a practiced movement, almost as if to remind everyone nearby of his wealth. He didn't like how Keanu seemed so out of place in such an extravagant setting, and he certainly didn't like the fact that the staff, usually so attentive to Oliver, were more focused on the quiet man in the worn jacket. The contrast between the two men couldn't have been more striking. Oliver radiated artificial importance, while Keanu, with his understated grace and quiet demeanor, seemed to have an effortless air of elegance. Keanu wasn't trying to show off, but he carried himself with a kind of dignity that Oliver lacked. The tension between the two men began to build, but it wasn't until they were both standing near a special viewing area in the store that things took a more dramatic turn. In the center of the boutique, behind thick glass, was an Atlas, a rare breed of dog known for its massive size and luxurious coat. This particular dog was valued at an eye-popping $1.5 million, making it one of the most expensive dogs in the world. Oliver saw the Mastiff and couldn't resist approaching, feeling the need to remind Keanu of his superior status. "Quite the specimen, isn't it?" Oliver said in a voice dripping with condescension. He could barely hide his smugness. "Though I doubt you're familiar with purebred Atlas," he added, as if speaking in a language Keanu couldn't understand. Keanu turned his attention from the dog to Oliver, his calm eyes meeting Oliver's sharp gaze. "Beautiful animals," Keanu replied simply, his voice steady and unbothered. He looked back at the dog, whose eyes had now fixed on Keanu, as if sensing something in him that the others didn't. Oliver couldn't help but scoff. "Spirit?" he repeated, laughing softly. "We're talking about a $1.5 million investment here. These aren't just dogs. They're luxury items. They're about status." He glanced at Keanu's worn jacket, his gaze filled with judgment. "Some things in life are meant for people who truly understand their value." Keanu didn't flinch. "Value can be measured in different ways," he said, his voice quiet but firm. At this point, the other customers in the boutique began to notice the exchange. A woman in a designer dress pretended to examine a diamond-studded collar but was clearly listening in on the conversation. Some of the staff exchanged worried glances, unsure whether to step in. But Keanu remained unruffled, his demeanor unshaken by Oliver's attempt to belittle him. Oliver wasn't done. He stepped closer to Keanu, his expensive cologne filling the air between them. "Listen," he said, lowering his voice but still full of superiority, "this isn't just some pet shop where you can window shop. These dogs are for serious buyers. The price tag alone," he said, gesturing to Keanu's clothes, "is probably more than your yearly budget for everything." Keanu didn't respond right away. He simply watched as the Atlas, which had been calmly lying down, slowly moved toward the glass, getting closer to where Keanu was standing. The dog's eyes locked on Keanu, and it started wagging its tail, a clear sign of interest. The dog had completely ignored Oliver, who was still trying to get its attention. Keanu's eyes softened as he looked at the dog. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the things that matter most can't be bought at any price." Oliver stood there, fuming with frustration. He couldn't understand how this man, this stranger in worn clothes, could possibly have the nerve to lecture him about value. He had built his entire identity around the idea that wealth and status determined worth. But here was Keanu, speaking calmly, with the confidence of someone who understood something much deeper than Oliver could imagine. "These dogs are worth more than just their looks," Oliver sneered. "You probably don't even understand that. You've never had the kind of money it takes to own something like this." Keanu remained quiet, his attention focused on the dog, whose eyes were still fixed on him with an unusual intensity. "The thing about dogs," Keanu said, looking up at Oliver for the first time, "is that they see past the surface. They don't care about price tags or status. They recognize something deeper." The other clients in the boutique had stopped talking, drawn into the growing tension. They watched as Oliver, who had been so full of pride, was now slowly being humbled by Keanu's words. Even the staff members seemed unsure of what to do, caught between their respect for Oliver and their growing admiration for Keanu's quiet dignity. Oliver wasn't finished, though. His face flushed with irritation, he took another step toward Keanu. "You don't understand. I've been a client here for years. I own 3 champion show dogs and my net worth would make your head spin. You think you can just walk in here in clothes that probably cost less than the dog's daily grooming and ask about adoption?" He let the words hang in the air, full of disdain. But then, something happened that no one expected. The Atlas, which had been ignoring Oliver the entire time, suddenly let out a deep, resonant bark. It wasn't an aggressive bark, but it was loud and powerful, and it made the entire room fall silent. The bark seemed to carry a message, as if the dog was saying, "This man is not the one." Oliver jumped back, surprised, but Keanu remained perfectly still, his face calm. "The thing about dogs," he repeated softly, "is that they know what's real. They don't care about how much money you have, or what kind of suit you wear. They care about who you are inside." Oliver's expression faltered. He could feel his carefully constructed world of wealth and status slipping away. He had just spent the last several minutes talking down to this man, only to find that the dog, the $1.5 million dog, had chosen Keanu over him. Keanu turned his attention back to the dog, whose eyes were still fixed on him. "Would you consider adopting this dog?" Keanu asked quietly. "I'd like to inquire about the adoption process." Oliver's face twisted in disbelief. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Adoption procedures for a $1.5 million dog?" he repeated, laughing sarcastically. "What's next? Are you going to ask if they have a payment plan?" Keanu didn't flinch. He simply smiled, his calm presence never wavering. "I don't think the price matters as much as the connection," he said. The boutique staff seemed to be holding their breath. Several clients who had been watching the scene unfold now exchanged uncomfortable glances. They were starting to realize that something important was happening, but no one could quite put it into words. At that moment, the boutique owner, Mrs. Victoria, who had been quietly observing the entire exchange from the side, began walking toward them. Her graceful steps matched the quiet elegance of the boutique, and she had a look in her eyes that suggested she knew something the others didn't. As she approached, a young staff member rushed over to her, whispering urgently, "Mrs. Victoria, that's Keanu Reeves." The words echoed through the boutique like a wave of realization. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. People began to murmur, pulling out their phones to discreetly take photos. Oliver's face drained of color as the weight of the situation hit him like a ton of bricks. He had just spent the last 15 minutes lecturing one of Hollywood's most beloved actors, known for his generosity and kindness, about wealth and status. Mrs. Victoria stepped forward, her expression warm and welcoming. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice full of grace, "I am so sorry for the misunderstanding. We are truly honored to have you in our store." She gave Oliver a pointed look that made him shrink back in embarrassment. The Atlas, sensing the change in energy, let out another soft bark and walked over to Keanu. It immediately pressed its massive head against Keanu's leg, as if it had known him for years. The connection between the two was undeniable, and it was clear to everyone in the boutique that the dog had made its choice. Oliver stood there, his mouth opening and closing without a sound. His carefully constructed facade of wealth and status had crumbled in an instant, and now he was left speechless. Keanu gently patted the mastiff's head, his eyes meeting Oliver's for the first time since the conversation began. "Would it have made a difference?" Keanu asked quietly. "Should it make a difference?" The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Everyone around them was listening closely now, as if they, too, were beginning to understand the point Keanu was making. Oliver finally found his voice, his tone shaky. "Mr. Reeves," he began, "I owe you an apology. Not because of who you are, but because of who I've been." Keanu smiled gently and nodded. "Every day we have a choice in how we treat others," he said softly. The things we wear, the things we own, they don't define who we are. What matters is what we carry inside. Oliver nodded slowly, the truth of Keanu's words beginning to sink in. He looked around the boutique, seeing it in a new light. He had spent so many years trying to prove his worth by the things he owned, but now he realized that true worth had nothing to do with material possessions. Keanu signed the adoption papers, and the dog, now fully comfortable with its new owner, followed him toward the door. As they left the boutique together, Keanu looked back at Oliver one last time. "Thank you," Oliver said, his voice soft but sincere. "Not because you're Keanu Reeves, but because you've shown me something important today." As Keanu left the store with his new companion, the customers in the boutique watched in silence. They had just witnessed a powerful lesson in humility, kindness, and the true value of life. In that moment, it became clear that no amount of money could ever replace the worth of a genuine connection, a quiet act of compassion, or the ability to see the world through eyes unclouded by the illusions of status and wealth. Keanu and his new dog walked off into the sunset, and for everyone in the boutique that day, the lesson was clear. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones you can't buy. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories filled with adventure, mystery, and excitement. Your support means the world, and it helps keep these stories coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.